Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. Before you tonight is the Rolling Hills 8th edition final plat review. It's been a little bit of a while since we've seen the preliminary plat, so I thought I'd give you a little bit of a refresher of where this is located. This is a continuation of Rolling Hills 1 through 7, and we have it here located in the southeast corner of the screen, Rolling Hills 8th edition, east of Crestview Drive, north of 6th Street, and generally west of Atani Drive. Just give a brief background as to where we've come from this point. July 8th, 2009, Planning and Zoning Commission conducted a public hearing regarding the preliminary plat and put forth a recommendation of approval to City Council with one condition, and that condition was the applicant dedicate a 10-foot wide pedestrian easement in a location near the midpoint of Block 2, connecting 3rd Street with the northern subdivision boundary as mutually agreed between staff and the applicant. Subsequently, on August 8th, City Council conducted a public hearing regarding the preliminary plat. Council approved the preliminary plat with the same condition put forth by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And on March 24th, 2011, the applicant submitted the final subdivision plat to be reviewed by Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. Ultimately, Planning and Zoning Commission on April 13th, 2011, put forth a recommendation of approval to City Council. This was I also gave a report last week to Public Works Finance Committee, which was April 25th. Some amendments that occurred between the preliminary plat and the final plat stage. The major was a relocation of a 35,000 square foot parkland parcel, and this previously satisfied a portion of the parkland dedication requirement for Rolling Hills 1 through 4. And then at the time there was a 50 acres of undeveloped land adjacent to Rolling Hills 1 through 4 that was under common ownership. It was owned by the developer. A portion of this 50 acres now includes Rolling Hills 5 through 8. So the applicant has since requested that the 35,000 square foot parkland dedication be relocated to Track C within Rolling Hills 8th subdivision. Track C is roughly 36,382 square feet. The preliminary plat had 45 single-family lots. We've made some lot line changes to accommodate Track C, this parkland dedication. And with those changes, the final plat has 43 single-family lots, so we saw a reduction of 2 single-family lots there. This is an aerial of the current location of the 35,000 square foot parkland parcel up here in the northeast corner of the screen. And this would be adjacent to, or actually be contiguous with Mosier Park. You can see the distinct line here for Mosier Park. The applicant proposing to relocate that. This is Track C, more centralized location between all the other Rolling Hills subdivisions. This is the final plat that has been submitted. Just some things to know. This was one of the conditions, or the only condition for the preliminary plat. This is the 10-foot wide pedestrian easement connecting 3rd Street to a future subdivision to the north. It was discussed that these pedestrian easements be paved with a 6-foot wide pathway. There's also a 30-foot wide pedestrian and utility easement in the center of the subdivision here. And this would be Track C, a roughly 36,000 square foot parcel. There's also a 10-foot wide, and now this isn't an easement, and this would be land owned by the city, and it's 10 feet wide. Intended to provide access from Crestview Drive to the parkland parcel. And this is a proposed grading plan for the site. As you can see, the pedestrian easement in the northeast corner of your screen here is relatively flat. Also have about a 6% grade on the middle pedestrian easement and utility easement, as well as in varied places about 6% on the parkland parcel as well. And with that, staff's reviewed the final plat for conformance and found it to be, and ultimately recommends approval of the Rolling Hills 8th edition final plat. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mike. Council have questions? Tom?
Just ask a question about the width of the easement, those 10-foot wide pieces, there are two of them, and you're saying a 6-foot wide pathway down the middle, so we'd have 2 feet on either side.
Correct.
And I guess my question would be for maintenance and operation of that pathway. Would there be enough room for plowing of snow and so forth if fences were built up to those two sides? And I don't know if that's a question for you or for Parks. But
I'm sure our Parks and Recreation staff would do a great job of clearing that pathway, and I think that, you know, the 2 feet on either side would be adequate.
Okay.
Walter?
To follow up on that question, why not pave the entire 10 feet?
I believe that, you know, just for snow removal and being able for it to soak into the ground, I believe it'd be a better option just to have it 6 feet, and I believe that was discussed in the preliminary plat stages that, you know, 6 feet would be adequate width for that.
Two ladies with strollers and toddlers. I don't know. I mean, it's not a sidewalk where you've got options. It is a narrow area to get from one street over to another subdivision or to another street.
Well,
It hadn't occurred to me until just now. I would have talked about it earlier with staff, but
well, we have sidewalks through town that, you know, a large variety are 6 feet wide, and two-way traffic I don't think is a problem.
not if two adults step behind each other and pass the other couple.
Looks like Bill might have something to add to the
Yeah,
conversation.
does somebody else in staff have a opinion?
Certainly would invite any input from Dwight, but the proposed pedestrian easement, there really isn't a design for what the pathway would look like. We had anticipated that it would be a 5 to 6 foot sidewalk that would provide a more direct access to the parkland from lots or parcels that are adjacent to the north. In this proposal, the applicant is not proposing to construct the pathway, just to provide that dedication as part of the parkland tract. The applicant was required during the preliminary plat stage to construct both the interior, actually the 30-foot wide easement location, as well as the one up to the north, but is not proposing to construct this one. So I guess what I'm trying to convey is there's an opportunity for the city to decide what width it would like to construct within that 10-foot easement, and that certainly would be up to the Parks and Recreation Department.
Answer your question, Walter?
I'll let the question lie with staff, and I think they're thinking about it. I'll trust their judgment, but I think Tom had a good question to start with. If I may, Madam Mayor, just to get clear in my mind, Mike, there are 3 pathways, one of which in the center contains a utility easement as well.
Correct.
The upper right one, just to look at the map, is an easement.
Correct.
And the one to the left or to the west, coming out north out of the park, is a city-owned?
Correct. That's not an
Understand the additional width for the utility. Why is one of those other 2 an easement and one a city-owned?
It just happened during the the amendment of the parkland parcel being relocated to Track C. The applicant chose to provide access and dedicate a 10-foot wide portion of that parcel to connect to Crestview Drive.
Bill, did you want to add something to that, too? I'm just watching your eyebrows go up, so please.
Mike's correct. The condition approval of the preliminary plat was for an easement for the upper right-hand access point between this subdivision and the undeveloped property to the north. In discussions with the applicant with regard to the modification and inclusion of the parkland parcel, we did encourage them to include that one as an actual dedication, so that it would be a little bit easier for us to maintain long-term, and because of its connection to the parkland parcel.
Because we have an interest on one end of it, is
Correct.
what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Other questions for Mike? Okay, Wayne, the Public Works Finance Committee talked about this too? Is
We
that
looked
right?
at that last Monday. Basically, we had the same questions asked and answered as were tonight. Tom had the same concerns. Of course, Walter wasn't there. But our discussion centered upon the pedestrian right-of-ways, maintenance. It's a good change on the park situation, so Public Works and Finance thought that this was certainly worthwhile to move forward. It's a final plat. We approved the preliminary, and the changes are there. Staff recommends it, so Public Works and Finance recommends approval.
You want to put forward a motion?
I would put forward a motion that we accept the final plat of the Rolling Hills 8th additional final.
We use the word approve in that, is that all right?
Did I say approve?
You said accept?
Approve.
Okay.
Make a motion that we approve.
There's a
Second it.
motion?
I'll
Okay,
second it.
Wayne's motion, Sue's second. Any discussion? Tom?
I just wanted to make one more comment that I really appreciate the pedestrian connectivity between the different parts of the neighborhood, and really appreciate that the developer is moving forward and has that same vision. I just think that maybe the city, we need to think about what those widths should be. I just fear fences right up against the right-of-way at some point, and difficulty with widths and so forth, and movement through there. So I'm sure this will be fine, and it's only 114 feet on one and 153 feet on the other one. So I'm sure that there'll be fine points, but I just think about maybe the future, we might think about 15 or 20 feet, or maybe that's fine. 15, maybe 10's fine. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
I assume the motion includes the amendments, the staff created amendments to the plat.
And were those part of the final plat, is that correct?
This is what the applicant submitted, correct?
Right.
So,
It
staff
does
is-
include the amendments.
yes.
Well, the amendments were to the preliminary plat. The final plat includes them.
Correct. What's
Right.
before you is the final plat. There are no conditions or amendments that are
Right.
necessary for the council to consider in their
Thank you.
approval.
Sue?
Well, considering that the original parkland was way at the far other end, I think where someone from Crestview Drive would have to walk several blocks to get to the park, I think having a public easement shortcut to a more centralized location is a huge improvement. And of course, we always want more and better, but I think the developer has done a really good job in this. And if someone thinks, if that happens to be, that short space happens to be blocked with snow, they could always go a few lots more and use the wider space. However, if it's totally full of snow, they probably wouldn't be using a stroller. So I'm very happy to approve this and put it forward.
Is there any other discussion? Walter?
General question regarding pathways in the city, especially those such as this that are short, street to street, or a few hundred feet. Do we plow those as a matter of course? I know we plow Paradise Path, we plow certain arterial sidewalks, but would we normally plow these?
Looks like Dwight's going to come up and tell us the answer.
Or do we plow other similar ones that are already in the city, Dwight?
Going to make a bunch peel out of it and brush it.
The only ones that we plow are the main sidewalks and of course the ones that we designated on the snow route. That we have several, well not several, but we have some stairways, and we don't plow or shovel those. We block them off with signage that they're dangerous, and just wait till the snow goes away.
So plowing these under present policy is not really in consideration. Is that correct?
Right. And if it's if it's a heavily used pathway, anything like that, we would certainly consider adding to what we already do. This one, and it'll be interesting. I think this will be heavily used. We just don't have an actual design yet for what's within the park. I would guess that that pathway would continue on through the park and connect, so it was a thoroughfare. So it was a usable besides just the park. And so,
Thank you, Dwight. Yeah, so the issue is kind of about efficiency, staff efficiency, having to haul the
I'm not
plowing
suggesting
equipment.
anything other than educating
But
myself
sure.
about what we're doing.
Good. Wayne?
Well, then a follow-up question to Walter's then, and I appreciate the fact that the city just cannot afford to plow and shovel all these different right-of-ways. However, does that mean then that these pedestrian walkways fall under the same conditions that sidewalks in front of homes do, and that is that the property owner is going to be responsible for clearing them?
yeah, actually, except this one here, of course, would actually be city property. So I guess when you think about it that way, I guess we would be responsible. Also, I would anticipate the access way going into what we would presume at this time would be a playground. The access way we would keep shoveled out so there was access to the park anyway.
Yes, Tom?
Another question for Dwight. The pathway on 6th Street that goes over to Cleveland, I think it is, by Short's Funeral Home,
Yeah.
that's plowed, right?
I don't know if I don't think our guys go through there.
Okay, do you know the width of that one? Is
I
it
don't, but
4
it's
feet?
a narrow one.
Okay.
Gary
I just
is
wanted
having
to try to compare in my brain what this is going to,
Sure.
the width of that one. Thank you.
And I could add a little bit to the 6 foot wide question that came up earlier.
Oh, thanks.
That 6 foot wide, the ADA, 36 inches for a wheelchair. That's double that. We felt that was wide enough. It's not meant necessarily as part of the bike path system, but as a wider sidewalk area, and it would accommodate 2 wheelchairs easy enough.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second on the floor. We've got our questions answered, I presume, about that particular piece of it. Okay. Other discussion about what's, about the motion? No? Okay. Wayne's motion, Sue's second. We're going to start the roll call vote with you, Tim.
Aye.
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 Okay, that motion carries, and the Rolling Hills 8th edition final plat is thereby approved. Thank you.